Sup shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patience video today that I'm making for dinner here as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen from an ex-named Billie Eilish, the song titled Chihiro off of the Hit Me Hard and Soft album. We're going to listen through this track from start till finish. We're going to hear what we think. Let's go, let's do it.
To take my love away. When I come back around, will I know what to say? Said you won't forget my name. Not today, not tomorrow.
Interesting tones of that bass and vocals.
Feeling sorrow. I got change you could borrow. When I come back around, will I know what to say? Not today, maybe tomorrow. Open up the door, can you open up the door? I know you said before you can't cope with anymore. You told me it was war, said you'd show me what's in store. I hope it's not for sure. Can you open up the door? Did you take my love away?
Tremendous reverb tails.
So you seated the counter when I looked away. Said
Music
you turned
delays.
around, but it wasn't your face. Said I need to be alone now, I'm taking a break. How come when I returned you were gone away? I don't know where I go. I don't know you at all. I don't know you.
Feels like a lot of song in 2.5 minutes, you know?
And that's when you found me. I was waiting in the garden, contemplating, beg your pardon. But there's a part of me that recognizes you. Do you feel it too? When you told me it was serious, were you serious? They told me they were only curious. Now it's serious. Open up the door. Can you open up the door? I know you said before you can't cope with anymore. You told
Interesting
me
started
it
the
was
textures
war,
there.
said you'd show me what's in store. I hope it's not for sure. Can you open up the door? Waiting in the hands of my life. When you tell me it's all in a trap. When you don't know if you'll
Really ethereal, interesting synthesizers at the end. I'm gonna like just let that last play pay out. Yeah, this is an interesting track. I do think I have checked this out for Dinner Here before as part of a live stream review system that we did, but it's good to listen to it with itself in isolation. We're going to talk about this track more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this track from an ex named Billie Eilish titled Chihiro off of the Hit Me Hard and Soft album. In this section, I'm going to provide an overall song analysis of everything from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? I think effectively it comes down to Billie Eilish dealing with getting cut off from this person. There's a lot of different angles that they're approaching this feeling of loss from, this loss of love. They have all these kind of, oh, it was a trap, I didn't know if it was serious, can you open up the door for me, they talk about wringing their hands on their lap, and you tell me it's open a trap, you don't know if you'll make it back, and they said, oh, don't say that. And it's actually like interesting because in that later section you got male and female vocals, like it was basically from each other's perspective potentially, or it's like a shared experience that we're trying to sort of at least insinuate. And that's when you found me. I was waiting in the garden contemplating, beg your pardon, but there's a part of me that recognizes you. Do you feel it? Do you feel it too? So maybe as we start the track, we feel completely isolated, and then this other person has come in and they've found them. Maybe there was just a not a specific person that their love was taken, but then someone managed to love Billie Eilish, and then effectively what occurred is they got together, and that's why they were singing at the end. I know you said before you can't cope with anymore. You told me it was war. I mean, to be fair, I'll go back to the lyrics here. Told me it was a war, said show me what's in store. I hope it's not been for sure. Can you open up the door? Did you take my love away from me? And I think ultimately these just sort of very kind of solemn, stellar lyrics from someone who is going through a complicated experience. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. It's a genuine, sincere way. The at the end, that melodic little kind of run at the end is kind of like an almost, oh, I've said my piece on this kind of thing, which is an interesting way to finish a track. Ultimately, there is this kind of vocally a signature style from Billie Eilish where there's this kind of softly spoken sung element there, which kind of belies their vocal ability. You hear in the chorus parts when they're a bit more expressive and free-flowing with the legato and sort of like vocal tails and runs there, they can effortlessly go around their range. There's some wonderful vocal harmonies and they cascade and dance around the aspects of the frequency spectrum. In addition to that, there is just this fantastic diversity within the performance itself because you have those two different styles of vocals together. When the male vocals come in near the end there, it's just a welcome sort of development further. But for most of the track, in fact, all of it really, you're just in safe hands knowing that Billie Eilish can pull off a song of this size with the different chapters, with all the various little instrumental adjustments that they make along the way. Ultimately, though, it's testament to our kind of capacity for vocal technique and sort of like our experience at this stage, having done music for almost a decade. At this point of releasing this album, that Billie Eilish just seems very comfortable on the microphone. There are absolutely no issues with technique. We've got, again, phenomenal dynamic range going down low, almost sort of like whispered song parts. Nice use of reverbs and delays. So there's some really sort of wonderful, mesmerizing, beautiful parts when the vocals start to explore just great sound design from a post-production perspective as well. And I think that all the different ways that we interpret Billie's voice throughout this track makes sense there. It is some parts where more vulnerable, some parts where more sort of like outspoken, but it is also very signature to their style, and people will be able to both recognize the voice and appreciate the gesture that's intended here. So again, structurally, you have a mixture of different verses and choruses and interludes and stuff like that. It's more about the consistent chord note push and pace through this. You got an innate sort of funkiness with the bass line in particular being very prominent throughout the vast majority of the track. There was this very sort of raw, organic tone to the bass, as it has this sort of inherent funkiness to it that's very sort of like low key. But at the same time, whilst it is understated, it's also kind of articulate in the way that it floats between the notes on the fretboard. You never feel like there are excess notes, but you also appreciate that they're not just rolling between like root notes and accents and octaves. And there's like boom, boom, little mutes and sort of like bouncy sort of chord adjacent 16ths applied there. There's almost like a sort of a swagger and a swing to it as well, which is kind of neat there. And it's just a wonderful compliment in a different part of the free spectrum to Billy's voice. You have a lot of coloration from Billy's different like ad-libbed and kind of sort of like sung and hummed vocal parts as well. It's very well decorated, and those kind of oscillate throughout the piece in different ways and form factors. You have this kind of very kind of like subtle pad as well that oscillates in a similar kind of groove and momentum to the drums with the chord note kick on the accents. And you have this kind of click as well as the drums, which is just very sort of like understated there, very sort of understated. And like the track is a slow burn. It takes their time with rising up to a point where you feel like it gathers emphasis. It's almost like we're very, very, very slowly taking the filter and kind of pushing up the highs there. When the cymbals come in, the hi-hat cymbals at that late stage there, it's almost refreshing, like we're coming out from being underwater. The one kind of bright, like incredible thing is the vocals when they come into those chorus parts, and they're very sort of breathy and free flowing in amongst the, like as a contrast to the low and mid kind of ether that the rest of the instruments resound in, as well as some of the more filtered vocal takes. And it sort of indicates that our hope there, our feelings there are the brightness that we're working towards. We have this subtle, really kind of beautiful thing going on with the synth sequences around the 150 mark, where they kind of rise up and it's hypnotic in the way that they approach. And the vocals go up there and there's a bit more kind of extra intensity as the emotions spill out. And we add a kind of sharpness with some of those synth takes or pad takes there as well, which I think makes it a bit more palatable when we come into the hi-hats there. Except we still come back from it a little bit. It's almost like we're rising up when we're starting to call up when those sequences come in with the 16-note groove. There is an extra kind of bit of passion and push there, but we're almost sort of like kind of a bit sort of frightened of going too far out. There's a kind of smoky texture to those hi-hats though around the 3-minute mark, which is very sort of palatable. It's refreshing in the sense that I think it fits texturally with the bass, both in terms of its various pitch and things, but also adds a kind of like an introspective resonance there, a kind of a low-key, like kind of a nightclubish kind of vibe to it there. Like the thoughts hazing around our head. There's also these distorted textures that happen on the syncopated or offbeats there. And they're like an occasional thing, like once per every 2 loops of the main sort of like bar or groove. And you hear it and it's almost kind of like, oof, you can tell there's some tension going on there through those alone, what they elicit. But as we go into that return of the synthesizer sequencer that we had around the 2-minute mark, at the 4-minute mark there, we're kind of getting an A and B side there. And we have the male vocalist with the female after Billy's been found by them. And you're just kind of rising up and maybe getting the confidence or gathering the ability to be able to sort of come out of that. There are these wonderful, these wondrous sort of like portamento synths as well that sort of dance around the upper end of the free spectrum at that point, like we are truly sort of gravitating towards something higher. And that is the extra push with this other person to get out of the sort of like the mire that we're in. It's kind of like a song where like you feel what we're trying to communicate, and the music is very sort of like expressive and to the point of where Billie Eilish is at. And it's just kind of a wonderful thing to have us go up, come back down, and then come up again. It makes the structure of the track work a bit better, I feel, in a way where it doesn't feel phoned in. And also because of the playfulness of it in a weird kind of way, it's more endearing. And also I think it more so accurately represents maybe what people would expect from this. Like it's more of a human experience, you know, things just don't automatically become happy, especially if you've been hurt or you're going through stuff. You know, you got to take a shot and sometimes it doesn't work, so you try again. Thematically, you know, outside of all these interesting ideas and elements within the piece, I probably missed a few. There's some very sort of subtle parts within this, but like it's major oriented, but it's extended with those arpeggios and sort of progressions and chords. And I think that's a sensible decision here. We're not trying to communicate that we're in a happy space by any means, but I think what it's more sort of hinting at is that there is a quiet, more sort of like pleasant resolution on the way. It's just that we're kind of slowly inching our way towards that. And as things start to occur more within the upper part of the frequency spectrum, you kind of more sort of like easily kind of equate things, and things, the connections are made, and then you kind of get behind it and you feel like a sense of elevation and like a really happy way for what Billie Eilish is, even though it's like, again, very understated and quite sophisticated. It's not an obviously happy thing. It's more of a kind of, hey, things are getting better kind of vibe, you know? But again, in a very humanistic manner. Studio recording, mixing and mastering. It's a track where like, if it, like the vocals are recorded in a way where it's clear that they're meant to kind of follow the song a lo-fi aesthetic, especially with some of the quieter parts of where that's presented. But then the deliberate kind of spreading of the vocals in the stereo field, the way they kind of blossom there with the high end there and that first sort of chorus part is just tremendous. You can tell immediately then they clearly know what they're doing. And they play with the relative perceived intensities and frequencies throughout the piece there until things rise up at the end. It's a big part of it, and it's something where if you're doing it on purpose, it can be incredibly effective, such as within this situation here. Ultimately, I just feel like the leveling in general was nice. There was a wonderful amount of dynamic range there. So there were some parts where the track just completely stopped, but it was dazzling in its approach, and there was a sense of maturity in regard to the way the things developed. There was clearly a very close sort of like relationship or partnership going on between the producers and Billie Eilish and everyone else involved. They all clearly were in sync for that one. I think just again the use of echoes and some of the vocal takes there. It's like the vocals are clearly produced. There's clearly sort of takes and chains on them, but there's nothing to improve the performance. It's more just to stylize it because Billie Eilish can clearly sing. They've got both their own just sort of distinctive way of communicating, but also they have this wonderful kind of very fragrant floral approach to some of the more harmonic and sort of melodic parts that works wonderfully with, again, the sensational synth patterns and a lot of the other elements through it. Nice and loud bass compression. Nice and loud bass compression limiting is handled. Nice sort of satisfying thump to the bass and drums. I like the fact that the bass isn't overproduced either, that it's got a bit of kind of a rough edge to it. It's a bit kind of gristly sounding in parts. It kind of goes up a little bit louder than maybe it should. I dig that kind of virility to that tone. No applicable constructive critique. Just from a final general listener's perspective, I think back to when I first listened to Billie Eilish, and I hear the progress that Billie has made across their time releasing this music. And I just feel like they're in a happy place right now. Ironically, again, considering the struggle that they've elicited or discussed within this. It'll just be interesting to see what they do next at this point. I think this is off of their third album, and it's just, I could be wrong. It could be the second album, I'm not sure. But they've released a few albums at this point. And I wish them all the best of luck in the future with their musical endeavors. Because thank you for watching my review of this track from an actor named Billie Eilish titled Chihiro off of the Hit Me Hard and Soft album. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via the various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SP Patrons video. Spider Hands out.